So, sit comfortably. Place your mindfulness on the breathing. Relax your body, relax your mind. And with a fresh beginner's mind, try to focus on the respiration. And let go of all the ideation, all the thoughts going through your mind, desires, frustrations, plans. Just take the sole object of your respiration as your focus. Having some experience previously, perhaps that the sense of ego, the appearance of the ego is an illusion and is just a mental image with no basis in fact the way that it appears. When you breathe out, imagine breathing out the ego, breathing out the winds upon which your attention is focused on the presence of your body. Then withdrawing your attention further inward to your mental consciousness, focus, as we've been doing for many weeks, on the nature of your mind, the substratum beyond the conceptualizing thoughts, behind the ideation, the images, like clear light. The very appearance of thoughts in your mind can reaffirm that spaciousness, because they couldn't appear within your mind unless the mind was unobstructing to them. They couldn't disappear if they were encrusted in the mind once they appeared. Bring your attention away from your eyes. It's not an eye consciousness that you're concentrating on, nor a body consciousness. Within that calm state of mind, think, for this very short lifespan, I've found conducive conditions, what the Buddha called the life of leisure, freedom from the unfree states, and I'm endowed with all of the cooperative conditions, inner and outer, we call endowments, necessary to practice the Dharma perfectly. But this situation, although incredibly meaningful, we could use it to, in every instant, accumulate merit, purify negative actions that we have done in the past, the seeds of which still remain on our consciousness. We can purify incredibly heavy karma that might remain on our mind stream and ripen in great obstacles, suffering. We can develop the good qualities of mind to become like the Buddha, become like the Dalai Lama, great beings. This life is very short. This opportunity that we have is fleeting and dissipating in every instant. We're as though falling through time, usually totally engrossed in the activities of just the appearance of the here and now, which from a higher perspective are very, very meaningless. The pleasures, the fame, the possessions, the sense of being loved and so forth that we strive for. preventing us from practicing Dharma on a deep level, and preventing us from being so needy, preventing us from helping others. The root of all of this dilemma is our ego grasping, the Buddha said. Not just the appearance of the I, but our adherence to it, our belief in, subtle grasping to it that energizes our laziness, our attachment, our anger, our pride, our jealousy, our depression. Same with all sentient beings who have not escaped from samsara, still laboring under the force of this ego grasping, self-cherishing also. When I find time to let go of my ego for some period, starting to appreciate the beauty of others, their plight, feeling compassion for them, think how noble, how beneficial it would be to achieve the state of omniscience for their benefit. However long it might take. To do that, I have to understand this core wisdom that realizes the nature of reality, emptiness. To do so, the Buddha taught various philosophical systems in a graded sequence leading up to that. And so in order to better understand the Buddha's skillful means in leading us to understanding emptiness, in order to put that into practice, in order to study the great texts that refer to these various systems and their various assertions and so forth, I'm going to listen to, study, contemplate, meditate on the 4 philosophical schools of tenets, Buddhist tenets, in order to achieve that goal of omniscience, of enlightenment for the sake of all living beings. And relax. Bring your attention back. So we have another guest tonight. What was your name again, sir? What was your name? Dave. Dave. Armin Trout. Armin Trout. Armin Trout. It's like Arm & Hammer, almost like Arm & Hammer. I'm glad you're more stable. And also Darcy's visiting for a while. And so nice. And who's that in the back? Have you been? Hi, Dana. Good. Everyone's welcome. Everyone else knows everyone else. So when we have tea break, you can all say hello to everyone. So, Mark, how many philosophical schools are there in Buddhism that we recognize?
I recognize 4.
4? What are they?
Vaibhashika, Sautrantika, Chittamatra and Madhyamaka.
Exactly. And Don, do you know the divisions of the Vaibhashikas? How many different divisions are? 18. If we were in Losan Gelson's text, does he mention all 18? 3. So there What are those? Do you remember? Do you know, Dan? Well, let's see. Yeah, okay.
Or Kashmiris.
Kashmiris.
Aparantikas and Magadas.
Magadas, yeah. So they're from different, kind of geographically separated like that. Although if you divide them up into the 18 schools, maybe a little bit related to the geography, but a little bit different. We've talked about so far the Vaibhashikas, the Sautrantikas, the two Hinayana tenets, and we've almost finished, unless I'm mistaken, with the Chittamatra, and maybe tonight we'll get to the Madhyamaka. So last time, did we actually begin on page 13, the actual presentation of grounds and paths? Yes. We did? How far did we get down, sister?
Well, we get down to B.
B.
The third lineage.
Oh.
And
Okay, holders of the hearer's lineage combine the view realizing selflessness of persons with a small collection of merit, mainly for their own sake, and due to meditating for at least 3 lifetimes, attain their enlightenment. Here, enlightenment, when it says enlightenment, this is always a tricky question because sometimes there's a little echo. Is it okay? Does it sound kind of cavernous? Okay. Okay. Georgie will take care of that with his skill and means. When it's the word enlightenment, sometimes people tend to think maybe it all means the same thing. But when it talks about the hearer's enlightenment, it means the state of arhatship that a hearer will attain. So the enlightenment doesn't always mean the enlightenment of a Buddha, although in the Mahayana context, usually that's what we're referring to. The Hinayana arhats only attain nirvana, whereas the bodhisattvas attain enlightenment when they become Buddhas. But still sometimes we use the word enlightenment as in the text here for the goal of the Hinayana. So the holders of the solitary realizer lineage, those who are of the lineage of pratyeka Buddhas, solitary realizers, they combine the view realizing selflessness of persons with a middling collection of merit, mainly for their own sake, and due to meditating on for at least 100 eons, attain their enlightenment, their nirvana. So both of them, according to these tenets, the Chittamatra, both of them take the selflessness of persons, the subtle selflessness of persons as their main object of meditation. So for all of the schools below the Prasangika, it's possible to attain nirvana by realizing the selflessness of persons, which is an emptiness of a self-supporting, substantially existent person. Do you remember kind of what the identifying characteristic of that is, self-supporting, substantially existent person? Oma Darlene, do you remember by any chance?
Georgie and I were talking about that at dinner.
Whoa.
I was saying it's too bad.
Scintillating dinner conversation.
It's too bad because when I look at Georgie, I don't see a substantially,
Sorry, George. Either that's a good view or that. I'm not sure what that means. Carrie, what do you think? Self-supporting, substantially existent person, what's the sense of that? We talked about 2 things, philosophically what it means and in terms of actual practice, how you would identify that sense of a self that's being refuted. Do you remember either of them?
I'd be guessing, but I'd say that the belief in an I would be our sense of self.
Well, yeah, there's all these different levels of subtlety of the I, so that's what's being referred to here. Anyone have an idea? Steve, you remember? Leo, have you been reading up on that? This is guys' night first, so okay, we have to know.
Well, no.
Okay, good. I'm glad. Let's cut to the chase. Anyone? So the sense, when we say self-supporting, substantially existent, this word substantially existent has many different meanings in Buddhism. So it's referring to a particular kind of substantial existence, a self-supporting substantial existence. And remember I said that there's, according to the lower tenets, well, in general we could say there's two kinds of phenomena: imputedly existent phenomena and substantially existent phenomena. Substantially existent phenomena are differentiated from the imputedly existent. Let's say like in this way, it's said that different things such as a rosary or a forest or an army are imputedly existent. Do you remember us talking about that? Because in order to perceive the rosary, it's not enough to see one part of it. If you just see one bead on the table, you don't say that you've seen the rosary. Maybe you could say in a certain context. Or if you see a couple of soldiers, do you say you've seen the army? If you see a tree, can you say you've seen the forest? It's said that those are imputedly existent phenomena. You have to first perceive the basis, and then on the basis of having seen the basis of designation, you can say that you have seen the phenomena. Substantially existent phenomena don't, according to those tenets, are different. They have a substantial existence, not just imputed onto a basis like that. So you might get confused, because in the Prasangika we would say all phenomena. Later, when we talk about the highest philosophical view, all phenomena are imputedly existent, right? But for the lower schools, there's some things that are substantially existent, like a cup or book or a table or something. A person is not substantially existent, although there is a sense of substantial existence to our mind, both of our own self and the self of others. The person is imputedly existent because the person is existent imputed upon the collection of the five aggregates, according to these tenets. So imputedly existent. So this is the sense of when it's talking about substantial existence. This is the kind of substantial existence it's talking about. In terms of practice, what it means is, as is explained in the meditation manuals about this, when you have a sense of I on a certain level of subtlety, there might be a sense of the I as being not exactly the same as the aggregates, not different than the aggregates, but somehow related, somehow undifferentiated with respect to them, as though it were the controller of the aggregates. And remember the analogy that's given, Frank, do you remember? Like the head salesperson, or we say the head salesman in a group of salesmen, or salespersons, excuse me. The head salesman is a salesman, but somehow differentiated, kind of like the controller. So it's not as though the self is one of the aggregates, but it's of a similar kind of character to the aggregates, because sometimes on this level of subtlety of this I, this is not the subtlemost sense of the I. This is to be understood as wrong, this grasping to this sense of I, but this is not the subtlemost sense of I that we have to overcome, this sense of self-supporting, substantially existent self. So this I, maybe we can recognize this now, and it's a very useful kind of exercise to try to identify that sense of self as being the taster, the controller, the meditator, and not really as though it were a different entity from the rest of the aggregates, completely different, not completely different than the body, but not completely identical with the body, not completely different from the mind, not completely identical to the mind, somehow on an equal footing with them. So it's this sense of self that the Vaibhashikas, the Sautrantikas, the Chittamatrans, and even the Svatantrika Madhyamakas all say is sufficient when realizing the emptiness of this, the falsity of this, that it's illusory and doesn't exist that way, that's sufficient to eliminate the delusions that bind us in cyclic existence, the klesha. The Prasangikas say that's that's not enough. That's a gross selflessness of persons. For these tenets, all the other tenets other than Prasangika, this is the subtle selflessness of persons. The fact that we are empty of such a self-supporting, substantially existent person. Right? Yes?
So how much difference would that be from ego?
Well, I don't know. It depends on your ego. What we say ego, all of these different words, personality, ego, self, soul, maybe you know a Sanskrit word, atma. What's it in Latin? It's just ego, isn't it? Or what is it? What's good? All of these different things may conjure up in your own mind different kinds of meanings. Like, what do you mean by ego?
When I listened to your explanation of the controller of the aggregates, I could see that as ego.
Yeah, ego is, when we say egolessness, that's another one. When we say selflessness, egolessness. From a Buddhist perspective, all of these things, although to our intellectual mind they may be slightly differentiated, they're all referring to the same kind of sense of self and varying levels of subtlety. When we talk about personality, psychologists who are not well versed in Buddhism sometimes criticize Buddhism's emphasis on selflessness. They say, the person first has to build up. How can you do that? First, you have to build up a sense of self, healthy sense of self. Then you can demolish it. Have you heard that? Yeah. So maybe there's some sense of that, but that's certainly not the aim of Buddhism. Before a person is, for instance, before we teach selflessness, we teach about the value of a perfect human birth, perfect human rebirth, the life of leisure and endowment. What we have, we teach about impermanence. We teach about karma. We teach about how to identify that you yourself, something about your continuity, will experience the fruits of your deeds in future lifetimes and so forth. From a Buddhist perspective, that is indeed developing a proper perspective, conventional perspective of the self. The self does exist conventionally. When the Buddha said there's no self, he didn't mean that there is no self whatsoever. He said what he meant was there's no, in this case, there's no self-supporting, substantially existent self. Still, even for the lower tenets, there is a self which is imputedly existent. And for the Prasangika, there's still a self that is imputedly existent. So when we say selflessness, it doesn't mean you don't exist whatsoever. Right? You have to recognize, to be able to differentiate with wisdom what exists from what doesn't exist. Okay, so according to these tenets, both the Chittamatrans, both the hearers and the solitary realizers achieve their nirvana, their arhatship, through realizing the emptiness of the self, the selflessness of persons. It means the subtle selflessness of persons. Bodhisattvas, on the other hand, combine the view of realizing emptiness of subject and object being other substances. So that's, for the Chittamatrans, that's called the emptiness of what? Anyone remember? Do you know, Steve? Emptiness of... Who wants to make a stab? It's called the emptiness of phenomena for the Chittamatrans, right? Remember we talked, for the Mahayana also accepts not only emptiness, selflessness of the person, but the selflessness of phenomena. For the lower schools, they don't accept anything profound about the emptiness, the selflessness of phenomena. They say the five aggregates do exist. The person is substantially, whereas the person is imputedly existent. So in the Heart Sutra, when Avalokiteshvara is admonishing or advising Shariputra, he says you should view the five aggregates also as empty and of inherent existence, implying not just to meditate on the selflessness of the person, but also on the selflessness of phenomena. So the Bodhisattvas, for the Chittamatra, emptiness means the emptiness of subject and object being other substances. How could I say that in other words? What do you think? Who would I have called that? Venerable, what do you think? emptiness of subject and object being different other substances.
Sorry.
Sister Thea knows.
I mean, I can't say that I know, but just in my reading, is it because it's the mind-only school? There's no truly existence form. It's merely
Oh, no.
a
For
concept of the
Chittamatra,
mind?
it's definitely truly existent form.
It is from the view of our mind.
From point of you have to remember, you have to go back and look at the section again. For Chittamatra, all other powered phenomena are truly existent. Truly, they exist the way that they appear. You know, they're truly existent. Let's say, not that they exist the way that they appear. Also, ultimate truth is truly existent. Only the completely imputed or imaginary phenomena are not truly existent. So you have to be careful about mixing up terminology. Here, what's meant by emptiness for the first of the Mahayana schools, for the Chittamatra, is a sense of reality, external reality, that the subject, any consciousness that's perceiving an object, and the object that it's perceiving, the sense that they are different entities, that they are different substances. So when it says here, emptiness of subject and object being other substances, that's referring to the understanding that there is no external reality that is of a different nature than the mind perceiving it. This is just saying it in different words, right? So we say blue, the object blue, and blue apprehending consciousness, empty of being different substances, because from the Chittamatra point of view, the subject mind and the object itself that it's perceiving, every single mind has an object, and every single pair like that, consciousness and object, arise as the ripening of a seed, one part of which is the subject mind, appears to be the subject mind, one part appears to be the object. But they're all implanted upon what? The dirt in your backyard? What are they implanted on? The foundation consciousness, or alaya vijnana, right? The consciousness basis of all. So that is one of the 6 consciousnesses, or what? It's one of the they certain of the Chittamatrans accept 8 consciousnesses, right? Not all of them. And so they add the alaya vijnana and the what?
Mistaken? Is that mistaken?
The unique consciousness that
Its function is kind of to perceive the alaya vijnana as the self, as a self-supporting, substantially existent self. Okay, so here, the bodhisattvas, for them, the bodhisattvas realize what the Chittamatrans called emptiness. It's not the emptiness of true existence, in that sense. It is a kind of emptiness of true existence. Remember, we were talking about this before? When they said the objects of abandonment, let's see, we talked about this last time. Modes of asserting objects. Am I on the right page? No, that's Svatantrika. Where am I? Wrong page here.
Page 13?
Yeah, no, I'm going to look page 12 here. I'm trying to find page 12. Mixed up. Okay. When we talked about ultimate truth, let's see if I can find here. On page 11?
I believe so. Ultimate truth. Well, the first introduction to ultimate truth.
Yeah. We talked about ultimate truth and so forth. Definition of an ultimate truth is that which is realized by means of a valid direct perceiver that realizes it clearly without dualistic appearance. Ultimate truth, reality, that's element of qualities and final condition are mutually exclusive. So when we talked about earlier, I'm trying to see here, there is a point when we were talking about the meaning of selflessness, ultimate truth, meaning the emptiness of the objects of abandonment. Maybe that's coming right here. The objects of abandonment. Just above here. Deluded obstacles include self-grasping a person together with the seeds. This is A. And the three persons with their seeds that arise due to the power of self-grasping of persons. Deluded obstacles, that is, the obstacles that prevent liberation, right, include self-grasping of persons together with the seeds. And the three poisons, not the three persons, the three poisons with their seeds that arise due to the power of self-grasping of persons. So for the Chittamatra, that which obstructs us from liberation, from nirvana, is the grasping to a self of persons as being self-supporting, substantially existent. That which prevents omniscience includes grasping as true grasping. This is what I was looking for. True grasping, together with its seeds. So, the question I had asked you last time, the Chittamatrans, don't they accept all other powered phenomena, dependent phenomena, and the ultimate true, fully established phenomena as we accept both of those as truly existent? So what does it mean here that the obstacles to omniscience includes true grasping together with its seeds? That implies that grasping to things as being truly existent is not correct, that it's something to be abandoned. But according to the Chittamatras, phenomena do truly exist. These phenomena do truly exist. Remember this, what we talked about last time?
I do, but it's the imaginary ones that don't exist.
Right.
It's the
So
imputed
when
ones.
it's talking about the true grasping, exactly. Okay, Mark's, no, it's nice, getting. I mean, it's that haircut that this helps. That's really good. Okay, so when it talked about true grasping, for the Chittamatrans, it doesn't mean true grasping to all phenomena. It means grasping to imaginary phenomena that are non-existent as truly existent, such as the self of persons and so forth. And a grasping to the existence of an external phenomena different from our mind as truly existent. So bodhisattvas realize this emptiness of subject and object. The true aspectarians, remember how many divisions of what are the two divisions of the Chittamatra? Do you remember?
True and false aspectarian.
True aspectarian.
And
False.
and non-aspectarian.
Okay, the false aspectarians, okay. So because Venerable Yangchen's on the ball here, she's going to have to answer this. So what is the difference, what's the meaning of true aspectarian and false aspectarian? This is what you get for answering his question, okay.
the teachers
Is that
did
the
this one.
one, that they, I'm wondering if I'm answering the right question. Is it that they believe that they...
You're answering the right question.
No.
Well, you're answering it with the right answer.
Okay, I wonder whether one believes that there's actually, it is a deluded consciousness and one doesn't.
Let's go back and look. Take a look in your notes. What is the difference between a true aspectarian and a false aspectarian? Do you know, Thea?
No.
Do you know, Venerable?
The true aspectarian believes that there's what appears to the consciousness, the gross object is actually true in the aspect that it is gross, and that's the true one that appears as the gross aspect, as the gross object.
Okay, so we have to differentiate. To understand the difference between them, there's a subtle thing here. Both of them, the true Aspectarians and the false Aspectarians, both say that the appearance of an external reality is false. They're not differentiated that way. But there's another part of that appearance of something called gross phenomena. Because phenomena, we know, this is always a problem in philosophy. Phenomena is comprised of particles. And the question is there an actual appearance of that solidity, that presence, that grossness? Is that a true appearance, or is that due to the imprints of ignorance? So what do the two schools say? What do the true...
The true Aspectarians say it is a true appearance.
Well, take a look at your, what's it say?
The definition of a true Aspectarian. Where's it come? What does it say?
That appears as it says it's not
Which page?
Page number 10.
Page 10. Okay, nice and loud, Venerable.
Second line under divisions.
They say that
The definition of,
the definition of a true aspect Chittamatra is a Chittamatra who asserts that the part of the appearance that appears as gross form to a form apprehending direct perceiver in an ordinary being's continuum is not polluted by the propensities of ignorance.
So it's pure.
So that aspect is true. That's the definition of a false aspect. Chittamatran, or the false Aspectarian, is a Chittamatran who asserts that that part of the appearance of grossness, of gross form, to a form apprehending direct perceiver in an ordinary being's continuum is polluted by the propensities of ignorance, is sort of due to those. Okay? So here, remember who those are. Here that says the true Aspectarians. Which one do you think is smarter, true Aspectarians or false Aspectarians? You're a true Aspectarian, aren't you? Okay. Here, actually, they both have different kind of points that are congruent with the higher tenets. Some of them are different. True Aspectarians assert that when hearer and solitary realizer foe destroyers means what? How do we say in Sanskrit? Arhats, right? So when the Shravaka and Pratika Buddha Arhats attain nirvana without remainder, their mental continua cease. That's what the true Aspectarians say. What does the Madhyamaka say? Madhyamaka say? Well, or what does the false Aspectarian say? Do you know anything, Armin? You have no idea? Okay. So it doesn't cease. The false Aspectarians are more in accord with what we understand from the higher tenets actually exist. Okay? Here it says, the true Aspectarians say that when one attains nirvana without remainder, when one passes into parinirvana, say when the Buddha passed away, his continuum ceased. And there's no sense in calling upon the Buddha now. The Buddha's gone. That would make a good name for a book. The Buddha's gone. Yes.
If the mental continuum ceases,
up until that time, it always exists. From the beginning of this time until one attains nirvana without remainder.
so then what's left?
Nothing.
The illusory body or something, or?
For the Hinayana in general, it's the same position of the Hinayana in general, right? Both the Vaibhashika and the Chittamatra say that when
One attains nirvana, that one's continuum ceases. Some modern Theravadins say, "Oh no, that's not the position. No, you don't put us in that position." But it's in all their scriptures, all the Theravada scriptures. No, they say the Buddha doesn't exist now. Then, okay. Well, we take refuge in the Buddha in the sense of what the Buddha taught and so forth. In the Dharmakaya, the body of the knowledge that the Buddha taught. But the Buddha, we don't, not like the Nirmanakaya or the Dharmakaya that's presented by the Mahayana. So they recognize Bodhisattva, but a Bodhisattva for them, when they attain enlightenment, like such as Shakyamuni, the rare individual who has the energy to wait 3 countless great eons to collect that merit, when they attain enlightenment, also their mind ceases. This is for the Hinayana. But for here, let's just continue. The true Aspectarians, they're talking about first the hearers and solitary realizers. When they attain nirvana without remainder, they just attain nirvana, their mental continuums cease. They assert that it is impossible for a Buddha superior's mental continuum to cease. That is to say, when a bodhisattva achieves enlightenment, becomes an Arya Buddha. That when it says Buddha superior, that's another way of saying Arya Buddha. Because there are different kinds of Aryas, right? There's the solitary realizer Arya. There's a Pratika Buddha Arya, Bodhisattva Arya. When you say Buddha Arya, Arya Buddha, it's just another, because a Buddha does realize emptiness directly, right? We say here, that's what Buddha superior means. It's impossible for the Arya Buddha's mental continuum to cease because bodhisattvas first attain enlightenment in Akanishta. That's the name of the highest. Ogmin is Tibetan. Og means lower, min means not. So it means it's not lower than anything. It's not below anything. So you could say highest. So there's a pure land called Akanista. In Sanskrit, maybe you've heard that name, Akanista? Have you heard that before? I don't know. In Tibetan, we say Ogmin. It's said that all bodhisattvas achieve their enlightenment in a pure land, highest pure land, called Akanista. Not one particular place, but in a highest pure land. And they first attain enlightenment in that highest pure land with a Sambhogakaya, the complete enjoyment body. That's what that means. Complete enjoyment body is a translation of Sambhogakaya. You've heard that name before, right? And that the Sambhogakaya does not cease in the continuum of the same aspect until samsara ends. So one of the Mahayana attributes of the achievement of enlightenment is that the Sambhogakaya, the complete enjoyment body, that's only, who can see the complete enjoyment body? Can hearers and solitary realizers?
No, because they don't believe in it.
No. There's a lot of things they don't believe in. You don't believe in a lot of things that you can still perceive.
Well, if they can perceive it, why don't they believe in it?
Gosh, maybe they didn't get to that point. Maybe they believe their mothers. It's facing them. No, it's said that only the Arya Bodhisattvas can perceive the Sambhogakaya because it manifests in a subtle form and it exists until samsara ends, continually turning the wheel of Dharma. There's a certain number of qualities that the Sambhogakaya has that's mentioned in the Mahayana scriptures. So this is mentioning some of them. It does not cease in the continuum of the same aspect, so that Sambhogakaya continues until samsara ends, but works for the welfare of others through various emanations according to the fortunes of disciples. So the true Aspectarians say the Hinayana Arhats, the solitary realizers and the Pratika Buddhas, when they achieve nirvana, there's continuous ceases. So they're just gone. But bodhisattvas, when they achieve enlightenment, their continua continue. Okay? Furthermore, for them, it's a little, now it's about hedging the bets. Before, the Hinayana said everyone, solitary hearers, solitary realizers, and bodhisattvas, when they achieve their goals of nirvana, they even call the enlightenment of the Buddha nirvana, the great nirvana, that everyone's continuum ceases. That's what nirvana means. Nirvana means like the snuffing out of the continuum. A lot of people would think, well, that doesn't sound very attractive. Just to disappear, Sounds like copping out or something. Mahayana says, first of all, the Chittamatras say some continuums cease, some continua cease. The hearers and solitary realizers, on the basis of their realization, their continua cease, according to the true Aspectarians. But the Bodhisattva's continua endure, continue. I don't want to use the same word again. Continue.
So basically, you're saying there's the Hinayanas.
No, they're not Hinayanas. They're Chittamatrans. They're Mahayanas. They're just
No, but they're saying that the Hinayanas
the,
cease.
the true Aspectarians say that. Yeah, that the Hinayana, the fruit of the Hinayana path there is the ceasing of the continuum. So it's similar to what the Hinayanas propose. Furthermore, the true Aspectarians assert that the three vehicles are definite in their own lineages, because it is asserted that sentient beings from beginningless time have three different lineages or natures, and therefore have three different aspirations, and therefore have three different ways of accomplishing, and therefore they attain three different results. So they say that there are three final results. There's the result of the hearer's nirvana, Pratika Buddha's nirvana, and Buddha's Buddhahood. And that individuals from beginningless time, a Buddha, an omniscient one, would be able to know what one's lineage is that was existing from beginningless time, and that one is definite to that.
What's the difference between the two nirvanas for solitary realizing?
Not that much, other than what is experienced in that last lifetime, according to them. So this is the big difference. They both cease, and even for the Hinayana, the Buddha's continuum ceases. So you might say, well, why become a Buddha? Because the Buddhas turn the wheel of Dharma. They're able to do more remarkable things. You might say the same thing about life. Say, if everyone's going to die, why work hard and become famous? Well, it gives a certain, flair, satisfaction. Some people might want to become. They might say some people want to become Buddhas because they've got that's their inclination.
Is that like wanting fame?
Pardon?
Is that like wanting fame?
Maybe. Maybe it's a little bit different because wanting fame is kind of based on ego, right? Here, let's finish this up. The false Aspectarians do not assert that when a hearer and solitary realizer, foe destroyers, attain nirvana without remainder, that their continuous cease. They don't say that, because although they assert that at that time only the continuum of mere mind that is included in true suffering and true origins ceases, a mere cognizer goes to enlightenment, and thus they assert the existence of one final vehicle. So now we have, amongst the false Aspectarians, we have something that is the same kind of view of the upper schools. The upper schools say that there is ekayana, one vehicle, one final vehicle. The lower schools said that there were different vehicles that had their own results that were different. Even the Chittamatra true Aspectarians say that there are these three different vehicles, right, that are different. Whereas the false Aspectarians say that when the hearers and solitary realizers achieve nirvana without remainder, although the part of their mental continuum that are true sufferings and true origins, that ceases. That's good. That means grasping to a self-supporting, substantially existent, and all the delusions that arise from that cease. The delusions cease. But the continuum, the mere mind, continues. And that eventually they are awakened by the Buddhas who snap their holy fingers. That's actually says something. By snapping their fingers, they are arisen from their meditative equipoise. It might be eons. It doesn't mean that they have a gross body, but their mind stream is in meditative equipoise. And at a certain point when the samadhi, the karma to have that samadhi diminishes, the Buddhas awaken them from that and let them know that they have not finished the work and they have not eliminated the obstructions to omniscience. So there's two different views in the Chittamatra. Some Chittamatrans say, no, they cease, the true Aspectarians. The false Aspectarians say, no, they don't cease. Everyone eventually achieves enlightenment. There is one final vehicle. Okay, that's the point here when it says one final vehicle. You understand? So we're going to go back to that. Darcy, you have a question?
That's the major point between the two of them. It's ekayana versus
Yeah, between the true Aspectarians and the false Aspectarians. That's one of the. That's not the only thing, but that's one of the things. Now, let's just before we take a break, let's just introduce this idea of the next school, on the next page, the Madhyamaka. So the Madhyamaka, although in a certain sense all of the schools would call themselves a middle way, the Madhyamaka school was kind of, in a sense, revivified by Nagarjuna. Remember, he was one of the trailblazers, so to speak, or however you might want to, charioteers. The middle way school of philosophy is talking about something even more radical than the Chittamatra view. Chittamatra view said that all phenomena, not all phenomena, but all impermanent phenomena, all dependent phenomena, and the fully established are truly existent. Some things are truly existent. Whereas the Madhyamaka, all the schools of the Madhyamaka says that when Buddha talked about emptiness, he was talking about the emptiness of true existence, that there is no true existence. So it said that when the Buddha turned the wheel of Dharma, you remember the so-called 3 turnings of the wheel of Dharma? Have you heard of that, Armin? Have you studied Buddhism?
You're recalling things from a few years ago, yes.
Uh-huh. So the so-called 3 turnings of the wheel of Dharma. The first turning of the wheel of Dharma refers to scriptures that are talking about the Four Noble Truths, in which the Buddha implied that all phenomena are truly existent, such as in the Hinayana. The second turning of the wheel refers to the Prajnaparamita Sutras, where the Buddha taught the perfection of wisdom, in which he taught all phenomena are not truly existent, are empty of true existence. Completely different, right? The third turning of the wheel kind of resonates with the Chittamatra, when the Buddha, it's according to some people's interpretations, Chittamatra interpretation, it's the correct view, where the Buddha kind of, first he went too much in one extreme, said everything is truly existent in the first turning of the wheel. The second turning of the wheel, he said nothing's truly existent. And in the third turning of the wheel, he said, okay, here's how it actually is. Some things are truly existent, and some things are not truly existent. But from the Prasangika, from the Madhyamaka point of view, that third turning of the wheel was for those individuals who were not capable of understanding, when they were kind of like presented with the fact that all phenomena are empty of true existence. They were, oh my gosh, oy vey, this is too much. So the Madhyamaka here is mainly based on the second turning of the wheel of Dharma. The system of the proponents of non-entityness, that's another name for the Madhyamaka in general. Proponents of non-entityness. That would include both the Svatantrika and the Prasangika as general. The system of the proponents of non-entityness is explained by way of definition, divisions, and the meaning of each division. First, the definition of a proponent of non-entityness is, that means Madhyamaka, one who propounds Mahayana tenets and does not exert true existence even nominally. So that means, nominally means even conventionally. And even conventionally, phenomena do not truly exist. There's no true existence whatsoever. Both the Svatantrikas and the Madhyamakas and the Prasangikas would say that. Second, there are 2 divisions. The Svatantrika Madhyamakas and the Prasangika, or consequentialist. Remember when we talked about consequences earlier? Prasanga. A consequence is called a prasanga. A consequence is, it follows that, Don doesn't know the definition of Prasangika because he didn't study it yet. It's a consequence. And you could say, there's no pervasion. Or maybe you would say, if you had studied it, you'd say the sign is not established because I have studied it. I read it ahead. Or you say there's no pervasion because I have an inherent knowledge of it from past lives, or something like that. He's a leaky pot. So a consequence. When we talk about the Prasangikas, we'll explain how the origin of the name came about. Third, the explanation of the Svatantrika and Prasanghika systems. And in order to do that, not only do we need a great collection of merit, we probably need a little caffeine and sugar in your blood. So let's take a tea break. Okay.
What do we call it?
So, the third turning of the wheel of Dharma?
The first one's truth, perfection, wisdom. What's the third one?
The third turning of the wheel is mainly talking about these three natures, that all phenomena are included in the three natures. Remember when we talked about the other powered phenomena or dependent phenomena, the fully established, thoroughly established, and the imaginary phenomena, or completely imputed phenomena. We just had enough?
There's actually, do you want one Darcy? There's more, you have more?
No.
Oh, okay.
Which is it?
I can make more of this.
No, Darcy does. She's just here for time. So, in the third turning of the wheel, one of the main, there are different sutras associated with that. I think like the Tathagata Garbha Sutra. Dorji, don't give up your examination.
I have the.
Oh, you can do it. Okay,
copy.
good. Okay. I thought that was a sneaky way of not. You say, oh, I gave it to Darcy. Out of my Buddhist side. Okay, good. You're going to make another copy for yourself. Okay, no, that's good. Okay. The Tathagata Garbha Sutra and the what's called the Samdhi Nimorchana Sutra. Those are the famous ones that are usually mentioned. There's others that are talking about like mind only among other things, but the three natures and so forth. Okay, so we're talking about the Madhyamaka, the middle way school. This is the fourth of the tenets that were preserved, how it's understood in the Tibetan tradition. And the Madhyamaka is divided into two. Those that are called Svatantrika and those that are called Prasanghika. So the Tibetan, for the Svatantrika, it's Rangyupa. Rang means self, gyu kind of means continuum. Rangyupa, literally, the way that they sometimes translate it is autonomous. Here, in fact, it says autonomy middle way school. What it means, we'll explain in a second. The other one, Prasanghika, is Telgyurpa, or Tengyur. When sometimes in Tibetan, when the final la, like telwa, telgyur means consequence in Tibetan. If you say each word slowly, ta, like the aspirated ta, la tel, then ao, I think ga, yata, gya, shebgyu, gyu, ra, gyur. When that second word begins with a prefix a, the la of the last word, like telgyur, is sort of dropped and it becomes nasalized, like tengyur. Sometimes they say tengyur. Like, for instance, when we say gendun. You know the word gendun? Have you ever heard that before? Literally, it's no, gendun.
I'm not getting.
Gendun. Gendun means sangha. But actually, literally, it's geidun. Those who are aspiring for gewa, virtue. So, but the word dunpa, the second word, has an ao prefix. So it's somewhat nasalized. Instead of saying geidun, when you say it fast, you say gendun. So, similar kind of thing with tengyur, tengyurpa, the Prasanghikas. So the names have to do with some philosophical debate between the two schools. First of all, it was just the presentation of Nagarjuna and his main spiritual son, Aryadeva, when Nagarjuna first kind of wrote the Madhyamaka Shastra. And Aryadeva wrote texts, among other things. He wrote a commentary on the Nagarjuna's text, his master's text, called the 400 Stanzas of yogic deeds or yogic activity. It's just called the 400 sometimes, or the 400 stanzas. So they're kind of considered non-sectarian Madhyamakas. You wouldn't say that Nagarjuna was a Prasangika or a Svatantrika. The origin of these two names came about later when one of the followers of Nagarjuna, Buddhapalita. Have you heard of Buddhapalita? It's just it's just his name. It wasn't a Buddha. It's just his name. Just like Dorje is called Dorje, it doesn't mean he is indestructible. Vajra. Buddhapalita wrote a book, a commentary to Nagarjuna's text called his name. It was called Buddhapalita. You might think that's pretty egoistic, but I don't know why. It's just called Buddhapalita. And in that, he eventually was shown to present the correct view of Nagarjuna very, very perfectly. He is kind of like the first of the Prasangikas. But immediately thereafter, one of his fellow scholars named Bhavaviveka. Have you heard of Bhavaviveka? Bhavaviveka wrote a text in which he criticized Buddhapalita's understanding and said that there were errors in Buddhapalita's text. And it's said that Buddhapalita was kind of like the founder of the Svatantrika. Okay. He said that his position was that it was possible that you didn't have to only say consequences. You could actually to understand emptiness. You could actually make a logical statement, like an inference, a correct logical statement with a subject, a predicate, and a sign, in which there was a inherently existent connection or an autonomous connection between the elements, that this thing was something which was inherently existent. He differentiated, he kind of implied that there was a difference between that and true existence. So this is one of the big differentiating points. The Svatantrikas say, although phenomena are empty of true existence, conventionally they inherently exist. Otherwise, how could you, if there wasn't some inherent existence of the cup, the basis, how could you label it cup? How could you, how could it possibly have any kind of consistency? So a lot of people think, once Darcy was saying that one of the teachers at Sarah May was saying that for a lot of people, Chittamatra is a very good fit for their mind. The other lamas say that the Svatantrika to them makes a lot of sense, as though makes more sense than the Prasangika, to a beginner's mind. So after and Buddhapalita did not apparently defend his own view at the time. Maybe the reason was that Buddhapalita was a Brahmin. Bhavaviveka was a Brahmin, and Buddhapalita was of a not that caste, a lower caste. I'm not sure what caste he was, and it was supposed to be inappropriate in Indian culture for someone of a lower caste to criticize an upper caste, something like that. There's one legend that Buddhapalita was later reborn as Chandrakirti. Not everyone says this, but there's a legend to this. And it was Chandrakirti who then defended Buddhapalita. And he is said to be, in a sense, the actual founder. I remember I said before, Buddhapalita is, in a sense, maybe the founder of the Prasangika, but Chandrakirti is sometimes said to be the founder because he differentiates Buddhapalita from Bhavaviveka. And he kind of used that kind of terminology of autonomous syllogisms. He said that Bhavaviveka was content with saying that there were autonomous syllogisms in which the various elements of the syllogism or the logical statement were inherently existent. And that's not true. And all of Bhavaviveka's criticisms of Buddhapalita, Chandrakirti went to great extent to criticize and refute every single one and say that Buddhapalita was absolutely right. So some people think that maybe Chandrakirti was the reincarnation of Buddhapalita. Now he could actually say what was on his mind. Okay, anyway, that's just a little aside. So the Svatantrika Madhyamakas, or the autonomous or autonomy middle way school, Uma Rangyupa. This is explained according to the 7 points that we talked before. Just the Madhyamaka, the general section, just had what? Three things, right? Definition, divisions, and the meaning of each division. Now we're getting into the division, the meaning of each division, the Svatantrikas, and this has the 7 divisions that we talked about before. Definitions, divisions, etymology, that is how did the name come about, what's the meaning of the name, the mode of asserting objects, the mode of asserting subjects or object possessors, the mode of asserting selflessness, and the presentation of grounds and paths. How did I only get up with 6? Okay. Definitions, divisions, etymology, mode of asserting objects, mode of asserting subjects, mode of asserting selflessness, and presentation of grounds and paths. Okay, so that's good to know. Definition of a Svatantrika. Can I say just Svatantrika, or do I have to say Svatantrika Madhyamaka? Are there any other Svatantrikas? What about the second of the Hinayana schools? Isn't that Svatantrika? That's Sau, S-A-U, Trantika, like sutra, from the word sutra. This is Svatantrika, instead of, there's an R in a different place here. Svatantrika. Sva means self, like Rangyupa, like Svabhava. Remember we said Rangshin. Svatantrika. And Tantra kind of means continuum, like when we talk about Tantra, the esoteric Vajrayana, so that Rangyupa has that sense of continuity also. This is explained according to 7 points. The first, the definition of a Svatantrika is a Madhyamaka who, or Madhyamika, who, by means of positing a reason that exists from its own side, does not accept true existence even nominally. So remember the definition of a Madhyamaka, or a Madhyamika, perhaps. Supposedly, Jeffrey Hopkins in one of his texts said, in Sanskrit, I mentioned this before, you see the word Madhyamaka and Madhyamika, which is correct. Supposedly, according to Jeffrey's understanding, a Madhyamika refers to a person, an adherent of Madhyamaka philosophy. So the Madhyamaka means the middle way. A Madhyamika would be what? A middle wayer, maybe. Can you say that?
Middleweight.
A middleweight. A middleweight, sure, wayer, not a middleweight. You think of Madison Square Garden. So the definition of a Svatantrika is a Madhyamika, a Madhyamika, so that's an individual who follows the Madhyamaka, who by means of positing a reason, that means a logical reason, that means like a, subject, predicate, sign, and example, positing a reasoning that exists from its own side, does not accept true existence even nominally. So they, within saying that true existence does not exist even conventionally, nominally means even conventionally. There's no true existence even conventionally, but there is conventionally what they call inherent existence, Rangshin Gidrupa. Remember in the Heart Sutra, some of us were studying Rangshin Gidrupa. For the Svatantrikas, they say phenomena conventionally are inherently existent. But they say there's a difference between inherent existence and true existence. We'll get into that later. So, and they say, in stating that, they assert that there are certain kinds of reasonings in which the various elements exist from their own side, that is, inherently. Okay? That's what's meant by this. A Svatantrika is, here says mutually inclusive, is synonymous with a Madhyamaka who propounds natural existence. A Madhyamika who propounds natural existence. Here that means inherent existence. You could, this is Rangshingi Drupa, I think. So there's a couple of hypothetical synonyms of that. sometimes they say they're hypothetical synonyms because for two things to be synonyms, they both have to exist. So some of these things are not, since natural existence or inherent existence does not exist, it doesn't sort of, how do you say, critically, you can't really say it has any synonyms because it doesn't really exist, but they're called hypothetical synonyms. Cinnamon. That's what I have some cinnamon in my body. They're called hypothetical synonyms because some people think they're synonyms. Okay, so that's the definition of a Svatantrika. Does that make sense? Done?
Yeah, I have a question about in that definition. By means of positing a reason that exists from its own side. So they're saying the reason, the syllogism exists from its
so
own
the
side?
reason, in here the reason, you could say reasoning. That refers to the whole syllogism. The reason I don't like to use syllogism is some people say syllogistic argument is something that only refers to Aristotelian logic. But so rikpa here means the reasoning, not just the sign. Sometimes we talked about the sign tak can also be called reason. We have a subject, a predicate, and a sign or a reason. Here, this is talking about a reasoning that exists from its own side. That means the various elements, the three modes, the property of the subject, the forward pervasion, and the reverse pervasion, all exist inherently. They're not truly existent, but they have more than just an imputed existence that the Prasangika would say. They say, if it's just imputedly existent, how could you have any kind of syllogism that worked? If it was totally, if there was only, if there was no inherent existence or existence from its own side. So existence from its own side and inherent existence, or as it says here, natural existence, that's Rangshin Gitrupa, these two at least are hypothetical synonyms. Existence from its own side. So they say that there is something existing from an object's side, but there also, for something to exist, it also has to be imputed from the mind. So it's like a cooperation. The lower tenet said everything comes from the object. The object is there truly. So now we're getting halfway there. They're saying something still exists from the side of the object, but mostly it's imputed from the mind. So it's empty of true existence. True existence would be something that existed without need of being imputed by the mind at all. We'll see that later. The Prasangika says everything comes from the mind, as though there's nothing from the side of the object. And so you're all going to say, well, that doesn't make any sense. The Svatantrika, obviously, there has to be something there for you to impute onto, right? Yeah.
I was thinking, of the particles in a cloud chamber, how by observing them, it changes the particles in a cloud chamber. Mm-hmm. Is this kind of reasoning related to that kind of...
No. Not just joking. I don't think it's maybe some kind of remote connection. Okay, divisions. There are two divisions. The Sautrantika, Svatantrika, Madhyamaka. This sounds like she sells seashells down by the seashore, right? The Sautrantika, Svatantrika, Madhyamaka. Let's try saying that a couple of times very quickly. And the Yogacaras, Svatantrika, Madhyamaka. So one of them, the Sautrantika Svatantrikas, they have certain of their tenets that lean a little more toward the Svatantrikas, that there is an external existence, among other things. The Yogacaras Svatantrikas have some tenets in common with the Chittamatrans, the Yogacarans, in that there is an emptiness of this apparent duality between subject and object. Remember, Darcy, we were talking in the break time, when one studies the perfections, the class in the monastery, it's usually the first main class. First you study what's called collected topics, which includes what they call dura, which includes lorig and tagrig and Tenets and Salam and other things. Then you study, the first main of the great text that you study is the Prajnaparamita. In Tibetan we just say Parchin, or you would say Paramita class. And mainly you study from the viewpoint of the Yogacaras, Svatantrika, Madhyamaka, how that they interpret the Prajnaparamita. Because Prajnaparamita is a perfection of wisdom sutra that's supposedly second turning of the wheel, so the Madhyamakas say that's one of their special sutras, right? So in the Yogacara, Svatantrika, Madhyamaka say that the three, we'll see later, the three kinds of individuals, the hearers, solitary realizers, and bodhisattvas, all have different kinds of main realizations, main objects of meditation. Hearers mainly meditate on the selflessness of the person, the subtle selflessness of the person. The solitary realizers mainly meditate on the emptiness of duality that we just talked about in the Chittamatra, that form and form-realizing consciousness are empty of being different substances. That's what they mean by non-duality. And that the bodhisattvas meditate on the emptiness of true existence. So they kind of have their cake and eat it too. They say that there are these three kinds of levels of understanding. Okay? So there's these two schools, the Sautrantika Svatantrika and Yogacara Svatantrika. The definition of the former, that is a Sautrantika Svatantrika, is a Madhyamika who propounds a presentation of nominal existence for the most part in accordance with Sautrantika tenets. That's pretty simple, isn't it? A Madhyamika who propounds the presentation of nominal existence, that means conventional existence, mainly in accord with the Sautrantika tenets. The definition of a Yogacara Svatantrika, the second, the latter, is a Madhyamika who propounds a presentation of conventional or nominal existence, mainly in accordance with the Chittamatra tenets. It doesn't mean they agree to all the tenets, but in terms of conventional existence, nominal existence. Kerry, did you have a question? Yeah.
It seems like, because the Sautrantika notion of conventional, am I right, conventional existence / conventional truth, that is completely different from the Chittamatra notion of conventional truth. It almost seems like they're comparing apples to oranges. Well, the Sautrantikas look at conventional truth as being non-compounded space. You know,
I was talking about here in terms of
nominal existence. I mean, here we're using conventional existence from the Svatantrika point of view, what it means. Here we're talking about conventional truths from the Svatantrika point of view, or nominal existence, because phenomena do exist nominally, conventionally for the Svatantrika. So there's not, the terminology isn't drawn completely from the Sautrantika, just as you're noticing. But in terms of the Sautrantikas asserting that there is an external existence that individuals can hold as a common appearance, external to their minds. So it's in that sense, and some other tenets that they hold that are more in accord with that. Whereas the Yogacara Svatantrikas accord with the Chittamatra view that that appearance of external reality is total illusion, that they arise from a seed on the alaya, vijnana, and so forth. Even then, there's differences of opinion. So some examples of Sautrantika Svatantrikas are Bhavaviveka. Now he was, in a sense, he was the founder of, remember we were telling you before, he's the one who wrote the criticism of Buddhapalita. He was kind of the founder of the Svatantrika, and he's mainly kind of like a Sautrantika Svatantrika. Yeshi Ningbo, what would that be in Sanskrit? You know? Jnana, what is it? Jnana Garbha. Jnanagarbha, if you've seen, there's some translations of his. He's also a Sautrantika, Svatantrika. Examples of Yogacaras, Svatantrikas are Shiwe So in Tibetan, this Shanta Rakshita, Sengi Sangbo, Haribhadra, and Kamalashila. Haribhadra is the individual who wrote the commentary to the Abhisamaya Alamkara that all of the Tibetan traditions use. Haribhadra's text is called the Sputarta. It's a clear meaning commentary, Deba Dunsel. It's the one, like the gradation, like when you're studying Parchen, the main thing you're studying that you're referring to, maybe like you say, the referent object, the main thing you're studying is the Prajnaparamita, the three mothers, the 8,000, the 25,000, and the 100,000 verse Prajnaparamita sutras, which are all referring to that one discourse given by Buddha, understood, recorded by different people in different lengths, but all the same, talking about the same thing. They're called the three mothers. That's the main thing. Then the commentary to that, the next level of explication of that is like the Abhisamaya Alamkara, which was exposed by Maitreya to whom? To a Sangha in Tushita heaven. And a Sangha came and either had memorized it there or wrote it when he was on earth, and that was considered one of the 5 texts of Maitreya. That's, okay. Then the main commentary, Indian commentary that we use to understand that, the main Shastra we use to understand that in the Tibetan tradition, although there were many commentaries to the Abhisamaya Alamkara, the main one we use is Haribhadra's clear meaning commentary, because it kind of is just as well explains. There's some commentaries that mainly comment on the 8,000, some that comment on the 25,000, some on the 100,000, but the clear meaning commentary by Haribhadra comments on all 3 of them very clearly. And then the next level of explication after that, you might study, as a Gelugpa, you'd study Lama Tsongkhapa's commentaries to Haribhadra. So he wrote one commentary when he was very young, probably younger than anyone here. I think he was like 22. Anyone 22? I'm sorry, Victoria's 22. Are you 22? No. Okay. I made a big mistake by saying Victoria was older than she actually is, so I'm trying to amend by that. I think she's about 22. Lama Tsongkhapa was something like 22 when he wrote, he combined something like 17 different Sanskrit commentaries, Shastras, on the Prajnaparamita Sutra into his main work that he wrote when he was studying the perfections, when he was very, very young like that. Later in his life, his view about the Prajnaparamita, slightly different interpretation changed, and the text that's attributed to his later view is called the Namshe Ningyan, the ornament, Namshe Ningyan, the ornament, Namshe Ningbogyan, the essential ornament, I guess, of explanation. That was actually composed by one of Lama Tsongkhapa's 2 disciples, Gyaltsabje, but it supposedly is Gyaltsabje's notes. Like when we go to the Dalai Lama's teachings, we might take notes and then later publish it. And so mainly Lama Tsongkhapa's idea in the later part of his life about the Prajnaparamita. Then even more explication of that is like if you go to Sarah J, you would study Jason Trukhi Gelson's. Jason Trukhi Gelson is the author of this text, right? The textbook writer of what? Which monastery? Sarah May? Sarah J, right? So then you would study that. And then even more explication or more elaboration to make things clear. If that's unclear, you would have your own teacher who's explaining, oh, this is what Jason Trukhi Gelson means by this statement. So there's it's said that in this degenerate age, just to read the Prajnaparamita is almost like it's opaque, you can't quite see what's there. So you use Maitreya's commentary to understand the meaning of it. And to understand the meaning of that, you use Haribhadra's commentary, who was a Yogacaras Svatantrika. To understand that, you use, maybe if you're a Gelugpa, Lama Tsongkhapa's commentaries, and to understand that, you use your monastery's commentaries. As a Gelugpa, there's 3 main Gelugpa monasteries. What are they? Sera, what? Trebung, Ganden. And then to understand that, you'd use your own teacher's personal oral instruction. So there's kind of levels of understanding. So Haribhadra is famous for that, Senki Sangbo, we say, and Kamalashila. So these two, Shantarakshita and Kamalashila, how do we know them? Do you know who they are historically? Anyone know? Who's the historian here?
Tried to start something.
Close. Who is it? Guru Padmasambhava tried to, or established, actually eliminated the obstacles to starting Samye. Shantarakshita, I think you're right, yeah. Shantarakshita was one of the first elders that was brought to Tibet by one of the Tibetan kings after, was it Langdharma, a non-Buddhist king had more or less decimated the Buddhism that had existed in Tibet. And when Buddhism was beginning to start up again, in order to bring the Sangha back into existence, they invited Shantarakshita, who was a great scholar. He was a Madhyamaka, but a Svatantrika Madhyamaka, a Yogacara Svatantrika Madhyamaka. And he had helped to establish the Sangha again in Tibet. And he said that in the future, if there were problems for the proliferation of the Dharma, they should invite one of the great Tantrikas of Tibet, of India, called Padmasambhava. And Padmasambhava was later brought and helped to then also establish Samye. I think Santarakshita, I think you're right. I don't know so much the history of that. Then also Shantarakshita said that in the future there would be a problem about interpretation of the scriptures. And at that point, you should invite my disciple, Kamalashila, and he will be able to eliminate that doubt. So it was there's a very famous debate that took place at Samye. You know what Samye is? One of the great monasteries of Tibet. You know? Have you been to Samye? You haven't been to Tibet? This life. I'm sure you were. So Samye is the monastery that was associated with Guru Padmasambhava, but perhaps started by Shantarakshita. And there was a great debate that took place there because at a certain point in central Tibet, there was the presentation of the Chinese monks. They call Hashang Mahayana. Hashan apparently in Chinese mainly just means monk, bhikshu. It just means Mahayana bhikshu was his name. But he was propounding this theory that it wasn't necessary to practice the path structure as we understand it. You know, in our presentation in the Mahayana in general, there's an importance. Although all phenomena are empty of true existence, there is no contradiction between that and the necessity of practicing karma. There is no contradiction between the existence of cause and effect conventionally and phenomena being empty of true existence. But for certain individuals that present a very high view, it sounds as though they negate all the presentation of the path. One of the statements associated with Hashan Mahayana was, whether it be a white cloud or a black cloud, it still obscures the sky, still obscures the sun. And therefore, to think that you have to practice virtue as opposed to non-virtue is missing the point. So there was a great danger that if this kind of doctrine, although at a certain point of practice there might be some deep meaning to that, in order to prevent people disparaging then morality and karma and so forth, they remembered the prophecy of Shantarakshita and invited Kamalashila, who was also a Yogacara Svatantrika, and he had a great debate with Hashan Mahayana at Samye. It's called the Samye debate. You can read about it in various texts, historical texts. And it's said that they debated, it was so, their debate was so profound that even after the first couple of hours, no one other than the other high gurus could understand what they were talking about. But it was decided in the end that Kamalashila had won the debate, and that supposedly is the reason why in Tibet there's enshrined this emphasis on the presentation of the path, not talking about instantaneous enlightenment so much as the necessity to practice in a gradual way. So anyway, that's a little bit about these individuals. So etymology. The reason why Bhava Viveka is said to be a Svatantrika Madhyamika is that he is a Madhyamika who asserts reasons that exist from their own side. So this is kind of like using, I believe, Chandrakirti's differentiation, saying that Bhava Viveka missed the point when he was criticizing Buddhapalita, because he said that you could actually state reasonings, you could say syllogistic arguments if you want, in which things existed inherently or from their own sides, the connection, the three modes, the forward privation, the reverse privation, and the property of the subject. So their mode of asserting objects. Existence by way of its own characteristic, existence from its own side, and natural existence are synonymous. So we would say, that is for the Svatantrikas, we would say they're hypothetical synonyms because natural existence, existence from its own side, existence by way of its own characteristic don't really exist. Let me see what the 19. Okay, Shipa. Okay, so the first one here is existence by way of its own characteristic. Rangi tseni gidrupa in Tibetan. Rangi tseni gidrupa. I think it's Fa Lakshana Rangi tseni. Rangi tseni gidrupa. The second one, existence by way of its own side, from its own side, is Rang Ngune Drupa. Those of you who are interested in the Tibetan, we can talk about this in our next Tibetan class. Ngone means from the side of, Rang means self. And the third one that here is translated as natural existence is what I like to translate as inherent existence. Rang Shingi Drupa. Rang Shingi Drupa. Okay. So these three are said to be mutually inclusive, or that is to say, they're synonymous. They say, the Svatantrikas say, that although phenomena are not truly existent, phenomena conventionally are inherently existent, or existent from naturally. This is the Rang Shingi Drupa, that phenomena do exist from their own side, phenomena exist by way of their own characteristic. Whereas the Prasangika would say, all of these three, are also synonymous with true existence. The Svatantrikas say, these are different than true existence. Something could be empty of true existence, but still inherently exist. Or I'm using inherently existent, still could naturally exist. For the Svatantrika, there's no contradiction for something to be empty of true existence, but still to naturally exist. So what that means is subtle, and we'll see if we can understand that a little bit better as we go along. Non-compounded space, or uncompounded space, true cessations, past, future, and subtle selflessness of persons are all non-affirming negations, non-affirming negatives, as well as being conventional truths. Remember non-compounded space, uncompounded space. For the Vaibhashikas, what kind of truth was that? Was it ultimate truth? For the Sautrantikas, was it conventional truth? For the Chittamatrans, it was conventional truth again. Here, it's also a conventional truth for the Svatantrikas. Non-compounded space, true cessations. These things are permanent, right? Past and future. Why doesn't it say present? The present is here. These are talking about things that are non-affirming negations. The present is a affirmative phenomena. It's not a negation. It's not a non-affirming negation. Subtle selflessness of persons. These are all non-affirming negations as well as conventional truths. Ultimate truth, reality, what was that before? Chuni, right? Or dharmata. Let me just check. Chuni is dharmata. And subtle selflessness of phenomena are mutually inclusive. That is, they're synonymous. Ultimate truth, dundam-damba, dharmata, this is like the real way that things exist, and the subtle selflessness of phenomena. That is the ultimate truth. It's synonymous with ultimate truth, subtle selflessness of phenomena. For the Svatantrikas, the subtle selflessness of phenomena is not merely their emptiness of being different, that consciousness is a different substance, the emptiness of that, from the emptiness of, say, form and form realizing consciousness being different substances. That's not the subtle selflessness of phenomena for them. It's that phenomena are empty of true existence. Sounds the same as in the Prasangika. Prasangika also say that phenomena are empty of true existence, but they mean something different by that. It's more subtle than the Svatantrika view. Because the Svatantrika say, even though phenomena are empty of true existence, there's something existing from its own side. There's an inherent existence, an existence from its own characteristic. The Sautrantika Svatantrika Madhyamikas assert that the 5 sense objects, form and so forth, sound, odors, tastes, and tactile objects, are of different entities from consciousness, and they are gross, external objects composed of partless particles. The Yogacaras Svatantrika Madhyamikas assert that the 5 sense objects, form and so forth, are one entity with a consciousness apprehending them. So that's the differentiation at this point between the two. They have other, these two adherents, like say Vaibhashika, who was the prototype of the Svatantrikas, right? How did I get this mixed up here? There's page 14. Oh, there's page 14. Vaibhashika and Yeshiningbo, Jnanagarbha, they have different views about some things than Shantarakshita, Haribhadra, and Kamalashila. Some people say this invention of the Svatantrikas, this division of Svatantrika and Prasangika is completely a Tibetan, especially Gelugpa, kind of artificial differentiation. You can check yourself over time, But I think it holds up quite well. Lama Tsongkhapa was an incredibly profound scholar, and for him there were these very distinct differences between the different schools. Some kind of modern scholars today say, oh, that's just, in those days there weren't any these kind of differentiations. I am a Svatantrika, he's a Prasangika or something like that. But from a point of view, you can kind of differentiate different views, like Bhava Viveka's view is different than Buddhapalita's view about what is meant, what's Nagarjuna's intention in writing the Madhyamaka Shastra. Okay, so now the mode 5, the mode of asserting subjects. Object possessors means subjects, right? The Svatantrika Madhyamikas assert a group of 6 consciousnesses, and that the mental consciousness is the illustration of the person. What about the Yogacaras Svatantrika Madhyamikas? Here it just says the Svatantrika Madhyamikas assert a group of 6 consciousnesses. So maybe those who are Yogacaras Svatantrikas, you have to check. Maybe they don't talk so much about the alaya vijnana. There is some talk about it, I think, in the Yogacaras Svatantrika, but maybe in general, they're still asserting 6 consciousnesses. So they're not exactly like Chittamatra in that regard. And the Svatantrika Madhyamikas assert that the mental consciousness is the illustration of the person. They don't say that the alaya vijnana in general is the illustration of the person like the Chittamatrans do, some of the Chittamatrans. There are 2 types of minds, valid cognizers and non-valid cognizers. So that's kind of common through all of the Buddhist schools. There are 2 types of valid cognizers, valid direct perceivers and valid inferential cognizers. That's also similar all the way through, right? The Sautrantika Svatantrika Madhyamikas do not assert self-cognizing direct perceivers. Rangrik. Whereas the Yogacaras Svatantrika Madhyamikas assert all 4 types of direct perceivers and self-cognizing direct perceiver. They assert all 4 types of direct perceivers, and self-cognizing direct perceivers and yogic direct perceivers are necessarily non-mistaken consciousness. The other 2 types of direct perceivers have instances of both mistaken and non-mistaken consciousness. You can see there's a similarity here with the Chittamatrans in that regard about whether self-cognizers and yogic direct perceivers are necessarily not being mistaken, right? So here it says the Sautrantika Svatantrikas do not assert self-cognizing direct perceivers. How about the Sautrantikas in general? Do they accept self-cognizers? Yeah. So you can't just go by, that's why it said the Sautrantika Svatantrikas mainly accord with the Sautrantika tenets about nominal existence, but they don't accept self-cognizers, whereas the Yogacaras Svatantrikas do accept the existence of self-cognizers. Okay.
Explain, it says, going back to the Svatantrika Madhyamikas, it says it asserts a group of 6 consciousnesses and that the mental consciousness is the illustration of the person. And I'm kind of hung up on that illustration of a person because they deny the existence. Is this a mental construct or is it?
Although the person is said to be nominally or imputationally existent, because not substantially existent, right? All of the schools, other than, the Vaisaputriyas or someone, say that the person is empty of substantial existence, self-supporting substantial existence. Even the Prasangikas say that's true. There's no substantially existent person. But still, other than Prasangika, all of the Buddhist schools say that still, when you check within the 5 aggregates, there is something you can eventually point at as an illustration or example of the person. There's a little bit difference with saying, I think, but saying that the mind is the person. It's saying it's something you can point at as an illustration of the person.
Is this something similar to the Chittamatrans' attitude towards the negation of the existence of an external object, but at the same time the notion of the existence of its aspect, its blueness?
Can I give the same answer I gave to Omar? No. I'm not sure. I don't think I don't see the connection. Might be. From the Prasangika point of view, if we analyze, Peter. Peter is a phenomena, a person, imputed onto his five aggregates, onto the five aggregates which are the basis for imputing Peter. If you search within although it seems like there's some Peterness, like Peter is my friend, Peter is this, Peter owes me $5 or whatever you think, or I owe Peter $5 or whatever. There seems to be some Peterness existing from his own side. So you want to search within the aggregates thinking that there's something there that is eventually Peter. From the Prasangika point of view, we haven't talked yet, no matter how you search, that's called ultimate analysis, searching for the object imputed, as though they're really, the Peter that we're imputing still somehow has to be there somewhere. The Prasangika says no matter how you search, you can't find anything. There's nothing, no Peter existing from its own side. Even the Svatantrikas, though, say that if you check within the basis of designation, the basis of imputation, there is something that you can point out as an illustration of the person. Nominally, the person is existing inherently from its own side, by its own characteristic. Otherwise, you couldn't label, it would be no more valid to label this gentleman Peter than to label him Victoria or to label him Mahatma Gandhi or, heaven forbid, George Bush. Pardon?
Except from a perspective.
As though there has to be something inherently there from the side to be the basis for the label. The other schools below that are having other reasons. They're just saying somehow when you search within the basis of designation, although the person is imputedly existent, not substantially existent, still you can find something that illustrates or is an example of the person. They don't say is the person exactly, but it's kind of as though something you can find there. The Prasangika is radical that way. There's nothing you can find there from its own side. So this is not something that just came up now with the Svatantrikas. When we talked about the Vaibhashikas, what was the illustration of the person there? Do you remember? Take a look. Where would that be? In the section of asserting object possessors. Vaibhashika.
The five aggregates as the illustration of
And some?
assert the mental consciousness as the illustration of person.
So for the Vaibhashikas, there's two ideas. Some say the illustration of the person is just the mere collection of the five aggregates. That, when we talk about the Chandrakirti's refutation, the 7-point analysis, that's one of the things that's refuted, that the mere collection of the parts is the chariot, or the mere collection of the parts of the person, the mere collection of the aggregates is the person. It seems almost appealing. You can't find, the person is not the body, is not the mind, is not the discrimination, not the feelings. Oh gosh, it's just the mere collection of them. That's one view. Other Vaibhashikas say that does it say neutral mental consciousness? Just say the mental consciousness? Continuity of?
Some assert the mental consciousness as the illustration of the person.
So ultimately, a lot of the schools, later we see the upper schools mainly tending to the consciousness, because that's what continues from life to life, is consciousness. Then the Sautrantikas say the example of the person. They don't talk about the mere collection of the 5 aggregates. They talk about a neutral mental consciousness. The Chittamatrans say the illustration of the person is what? The two, remember? You just saw? Take a look quickly. Where would it be? Under object possessors, right? What does it say there?
Mind basis of all. Those are true Aspectarians.
So the true Aspectarians say the illustration of the person, even though the person is just imputed, the illustration of the person is the mind basis of all, the alaya vijnana. And the false Aspectarians?
6 consciousnesses and posit the mere mental consciousness as the illustration.
So the false Aspectarians don't talk about the alaya vijnana, so they say the mere mental consciousness. Again, so somehow it's talking about the mental consciousness. Here for the Svatantrikas, what are we saying here? Lost my place. Oh, you're calling back from what we were saying just a second ago. You jumped back about the what was the person, right? The person. Here, the illustration of the person is what for the Svatantrika.
I was just reading.
Continuum of the aggregates, the illustration of the person. Some assert the mirror of consciousness.
No, that's Svatantrika Madhyamaka. Right here.
The mental consciousness, a group of 6 consciousnesses, and the mental consciousness is the illustration.
Okay.
The Sautrantika, Svatantrika, Madhyamikas do not assert self-cognizing direct perceivers. The Yogacaras, Svatantrikas assert 4 types of direct perceivers, so forth. We did that. Sautrantika, Chittamatra, and Svatantrika all assert that direct perceivers are necessarily non-conceptual consciousnesses. That subsequent cognizers are necessarily non-valid, because they're not new, right? Cognizers. That consciousnesses mistaken with respect to their determined object, that means their conceived object, are pervaded as wrong consciousnesses. So this is not, present Gika are not going to accept these things. And we'll talk next time, that if it is a mistaken consciousness with respect to a phenomena, it is necessarily a non-valid mind with respect to that phenomena. And that if it is an inferential cognizer, it is necessarily a non-valid mind with respect to its appearing object and so forth. So let's stop there. So let's take your midterm exam, some hour during the week, bring it back next time. Have a nice Thanksgiving. Let's dedicate the merits that we created this evening. So dedication involves this both conventional nominal part and a dedication within the emptiness of the 3 spheres subsequent to that. First, you have to have a basis to dedicate in the emptiness of the 3 spheres. So you have to do a conventional dedication, first of all. Due to these merits, may I quickly become a Guru Buddha. You know, all that implies in that, through all the stages, may these merits not exhaust themselves until I achieve that state of Buddhahood in which I'm a guru for all living beings, manifesting as teacher out of compassion, and thereby lead each and every sentient being into that very same state. So it's thinking of these merits. Due to these merits, may that come about. And then dedicating in the emptiness of the 3 spheres, the emptiness of the merits that we have created, the karmic seeds of which are deposited on our consciousness, merely imputed, can't be found, although they seem, talking about karmic seeds and so forth, seem to be existing from their own side, even from a Svatantrika point of view, they're empty of existing that way. They're merely imputed, although they function. And the goal dedicated to our achievement of enlightenment for the welfare of all sentient beings, being capable of leading them into that same state, that will exist eventually, conventionally, but doesn't exist from its own side the way that it appears to the mind, does not exist truly. And the act of dedication that we're doing right now can't be found also, even though it seems like something solid and findable, inherently existent from its own side. It can't be found anywhere on the parts of the dedication, the moments in which we're thinking of the merits, the moments when we're thinking of the goal, the moments when we're trying to join the two. It's just a name we impute to that collection of parts.